The Empire Center for Public Policy today released the 2014 edition of What They Make. It's an overview of local government payrolls outside of New York City from the past year. The Empire Center releases this report to let taxpayers know how their money is being spent and who is making the most money. Joining me now to talk more about the report is the Empire Center's Tim Hoefer. Tim, thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So this is always fascinating to see not just who is earning the most money, but how much money they're making. And in many cases, you've got a number of these local government employees who are not people that anyone has really heard of, no offense to them, but they are in many cases earning far more than what Governor Andrew Cuomo is making. $166,000 a year is his base salary.
Sure, and we've done this report for 3 or 4 years now, and we always benchmark to the governor's salary as looking at the person who's the chief executive of our state, who should be paid a fair wage. And then we actually look at the statutory wage, which is $179,000, of which there are 1,800 people this year who earned more than that. And sort of the purpose of doing that is to say, well, here are these people, here are how much they paid. Do you, taxpayer, think they're getting paid a fair wage? Is it too much? Is it too little? Let's start making some choices and asking some questions.
And in many cases, this is overtime on top of base pay.
In some cases, it's overtime. In some cases, it's a salary. These numbers are essentially the W-2 number. It's what they actually got paid, so it may include payouts for retirement or sick leave or something like that. What it does not include is fringe benefits. So this doesn't include the cost of their pension benefit or their health care or FICA taxes or anything like that. And sort of these benefits on top of your salary can often equal 35 or 50% of what your pay is.
And that is, I guess, the heart of the matter here is that this actually does roll up into pension costs at the end of the day, which is something that, is a continual concern for the state in terms of how they're going to pay for the retirement of, hundreds of thousands of public employees. How does overtime, how do these high salaries on the local level ultimately impact the state pension system?
So your pension contribution is based on your overall payroll. So as an employer, as a town or a village or a county or a city, you're going to base your pension payment on what somebody is earning. That sustainability in the long run depends on who's paying out and when you're paying it out and how long somebody works and what their accumulated benefit is at the end of their career. In the short term, I think the impact here is this report is talking about salaries. We're talking about what you're actually paying out in this past year, which is directly connected to your property taxes. Payrolls can equal anywhere from 70 to 80% of a budget, of a municipal budget. So this report is looking at really what the crux of your taxes go to. So this is the biggest chunk of it, and we think it's the easiest place to start to look at where all these tax dollars go.
Well, it is also important to point out that you have a really interesting chart here. Highest average pay statewide for city employees, county employees. For counties, the top 3 are Westchester, Suffolk, Nassau, and immediately I think, well, those are the most expensive counties to live in when it comes to being a property taxpayer.
And you expect that. They are also some of the highest tax places in terms of property tax in the state and in the nation. I think the cost of living there is higher, and you expect them to be high. Right. Do we expect them to be this high, though, is the question.
And then when it comes to cities, you've got Yonkers, my hometown, which is the 4th largest city in the state, but you've also got some smaller cities on here where public employees are earning a large amount of money, or at least I would say, surprisingly large amount of money on average compared to the median state income. New Rochelle, Peekskill, Rye, White Plains. White Plains is the county seat, but not necessarily these are large major cities. What is driving these employee salaries primarily?
There's a few things. I think the biggest thing that drives employee salaries, we would and have for many years now argued, is the Triborough Amendment, which is how you garner, how you come to terms on a collectively bargained contract for public employees. That system that doesn't allow the municipality to sort of negotiate in good faith because terms of the old contract continue until a new one is reached. So that continues to drive employee salaries up, even if there isn't a new contract in place. The second thing we look at, there are a lot of municipalities across the state, especially as you start to get into upstate New York, where the population has shrunk significantly. but the amount and cost of the services has not changed with it. So there are a lot of cities, especially upstate, that are still offering services like they were when they were once a larger, more prosperous manufacturing city, perhaps. But the population has gone and revenues are down, so they're paying a lot of money for things that they can't necessarily support anymore.
Well, that's when you get into the whole argument about consolidation, shared services, things like that,
Absolutely.
which have largely stalled on the local level, especially in some of these smaller upstate communities where, say, you've got a local police force that's in a village, but necessarily people don't want to lose that service. Do you think seeing these numbers will change people's view of that at all?
We hope so. I know that it's garnered good conversation in the past, and I think it will again. And we've been talking a lot, as have some of the associations throughout the state, about shared services and mergers and consolidations. I think some of it is readjusting our expectations of what a government should provide. Are we getting the services we think we should? Do we want to pay for these things? And then as a taxpayer, if your answer is yes, I do want to continue paying for it, we've got to find a way to do it that's within the means of the taxpayer, and that's when you go back to, well, we've got to find a cheaper way. And maybe that's by sharing, maybe it's by consolidating, maybe it's by reducing services.
The governor has made a big point about that shared services, and he's been trying to give communities tools, sticks, carrots, call it what you will, in order to kind of speed that process along. However, we haven't seen that happen yet all that much. Why is that? Are there still too many roadblocks to shared services to these issues, or is it just kind of local government, local issues, local political will that doesn't exist for this at this point?
I think there's certainly a fiefdom sort of mentality of this is my town and I'm going to do things the way I want. I think there are people, I know there are people that we've talked to who are nervous to get into agreements with people they don't know or maybe don't trust. But I think the farther we go, the property tax cap has been really good in terms of sort of holding municipalities and school districts to what their actual revenue and communities can support. So we're not far or just over or just below the sort of the breaking point where we're not going to be able to continue to sustain services that there's no revenue to back up, and it's going to force the hand on some of these things. We did a report a couple of weeks ago that talked closely about shared services and what options are available, and I think there's more shared services than you would typically think, or that you would sort of anecdotally think happening across the state. But there are a lot of areas where people can do more, and some of that is in back-end services. And I know some of the hesitation there is when you start talking about human resources and payroll and accounts payable and those sorts of things. We're not talking about systems, you're talking about people, and you're reducing the workforce. And that's a hard conversation to have, both on the human level and on the political level and on a municipal level.
Well, I guess to that point and to the point that we started out with is that, all these folks are earning more than the governor. And when he took office, I remember he raised a big issue about school superintendents earning more than what the governor makes. Is there something that can be done beyond the shared services aspect of things in order to, if there is an employee who is routinely making beyond just simple six figures, going into the $250,000, more than $250,000, is there anything, that the state has at its disposal that can cap that pay? Is that even constitutional? Is that even legal? Does the state even want to get involved on something like that, where they're dictating to local governments that they can limit what they pay employees?
I haven't heard the governor talk about capping superintendent salaries in years. And our initial reaction to that was, and still is, that are there superintendents who are paid very well? Yes. Are they the problem? No, because there are only 700 some odd superintendents in the state. There are tens of thousands of teachers. We have to look at what if you start with a bigger problem and reducing teacher salaries on a whole or municipal salaries on a whole instead of going after one person, that's certainly going to have more of an impact, both long-term and short-term.
All righty. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Tim, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.